Welcome to the AgilePoint Construction Permit Build from Scratch video. To begin building the application from the AgilePoint portal homepage, I'm going to select Build Apps from my portal level menu. From within the application designer, I'll select Data Entities, and we can begin to design how we'll use and store data as a part of the application. Okay, let's begin designing our entity. I will click Add New Entity. We'll give it a title of Construction Permit Demo and categorize it of type Other. My first field here will be the request number, which will be of type Auto Increment, which will give me a unique value each time this application runs. I will select all of the default options for permission and ability to export the entity and move between tenants. First, let's begin by capturing some information about our requester. I will add a field and use type text for our contact name. Next, I'm going to use the email control to capture the contact's email address. I will use the phone control to capture the contact's phone number. Next, we'll use a text area to capture the contact's home address. I'll use a text box to capture the site address. I'll use a text box to capture the role of the requester. We'll use a text box to capture Supervised By. And again use a text box for the applicant certification field. We have now created our entity and can begin creating the application. Now that we've built our data entity, let's begin designing the application. I'll select Add App and click Form-Based Application and give my application a name. Next, I'm going to select my primary data source and will use the entity that we created just a moment ago. I'm going to give this data source a name, select Custom Entities Only, and then select the entity from the drop-down menu. I'll click Finish. AgilePoint will create a number of application artifacts on my behalf, and I can begin designing my form. First, I'm going to want to give this form a name, Construction Permit. Next, I will drag over a heading control, which will be for our contact information of the user requesting the permit. Next, I'll start dragging over fields for my data entity on the right-hand side under Data Model, and I'll start off with the contact name. Now I'll want to personalize this so that the current logged in user's name displays by default. To do this, I'll explore the process data, select System Data, and bring over the user's full name. Next, I'll do the same with my contact email address. I will again go to System Data and select User Email Address and drag that over to the default value field. Next, I'll bring over the contact phone, and I will configure it such that the number is dialed within the US. I'm going to bring over the contact home address and line it up with the other fields on my form. Bring over another heading, which will be my site address information. Next, I'm going to bring over a radio button control and give the user the ability to search for a site based on address or by coordinates. I'm going to give it a name and then configure my two options. First will be enter address, and second will be to enter coordinates. Next, I'm going to use an auto-suggest control to look up data from a REST service I will drag over the Auto Suggest control, give it a name, and click on Configure. I will select the list type of Lookup List and click the plus icon to configure my lookup. I'm going to select REST Service, click Advanced Configuration, give this lookup a name, and leave it as name-value pair. Next, I will input the URL of the REST service, and I will click over to the Response tab. Here I'm going to get the response from simulation and simulate it. I'll save that, and now map the data in my schema. Response data will go to name and value pair, and the full address will be mapped to both name and value. Next, I'll click Finish and close out of the Auto Suggest configuration. Next, I'm going to bring over a text box. My first text box will be for latitude, and my second text box will be for longitude. Next, I'll want to auto lookup coordinates based on the site address. To do that, I'm going to search for the auto lookup control and drag it onto free space on my form. I'm going to give this a name, get coordinates by site address, click Configure, and set up my lookup source. Again, this will be a REST service. I will select Advanced Configuration, this time with multiple columns instead of name-value pair. I'm going to input the URL for my REST service and then navigate over to the Response tab. Here I will get the response based on a simulation, and I will validate that the data returned is in fact correct. Let's map the fields. So I'm going to bring over the X coordinate over to longitude and the Y coordinate over to latitude. I will click Finish and then execute this lookup on a specific field value change and tie that to search site address. Next, I'm going to bring over a text box. This will be my site address display field. Next, I want to get address by coordinates. To do so, I will again use an auto lookup and drag it over to free space. I will give this label a name, get address by coordinates, and again configure my lookup source against a REST service. Again, I will select Advanced Configuration, title my lookup Get Address by Coordinates, and again input the URL for my REST service. I will navigate over to the Response tab and get the response from simulation and input the URL to validate my REST call. The data is looking correct, so I'm going to click Save and map the schema. I'm going to map Get Address by Coordinates, and again execute this lookup on a specific field value change. In this case, based on the change to the longitude field. On lookup completion, trigger a change for all of my target controls. Next, I will bring over the site address for my data entity that we created earlier and line it up with the other fields on my form. Next, I'm going to bring in a map control. I'm going to name this my map address. I'm going to select the appropriate access token for Google Maps. And I'm going to zoom all the way in to 18. Under the Advanced tab, I'm going to increase the height from 300 to 500 pixels And again, drag my map all the way over so that it lines up with the other fields on my form. Next, let's build a rule. When the site address display is present, I want to set a field value. I'm going to do this for a few controls here, the first being site address, and the second being the map. I'm going to bring over fields, site address display, for both of these, and click OK. Now that that's in place, let's test our configuration using the built-in testing tools within the designer. I'll input an address into the search site address field, and AgilePoint will auto-populate the remaining text fields, as well as include a beacon on the map showing the current location. I will save this application and resume adding fields to my form. Next, I'll use a drop-down list. We will show the role of the user requesting the permit. I'm going to change this and give 3 options. The first of which will be homeowner. My second option is licensed contractor. And my third option will be of type other. I'll close these settings. I will map that field to the role field within our data entity, and now add a radio button. Will the work be supervised by a licensed contractor? We'll go over to the Configure tab here and build in a few inline options. The first of which is licensed contractor, and the second will be for the homeowner. I'm going to map that to the supervised field within my data entity and drag it all the way over. As an option, we can change the orientation of our radio buttons to horizontal. Next, let's use a checkbox to give the applicant the ability to certify their submission. I have some standard legal language that I need to include. And close out those settings. Again, I will drag this all the way over as an optional step. Next, I will add a file upload control to add any supplementary documents that I may need as a part of this construction permit. I'm going to give it an internal name of supporting documents and click Configure and select a target file repository. I'm going to select my local SharePoint environment as my file storage location, but as you can see, you have a number of options. I'm going to specify the location to which the data should be stored. And as you can see, have selected a library titled Construction Permit Repository. I can specify the folder path, as well as the new folder name, and ensure that that data is displayed dynamically based on the requester. As you can see, I have dragged over the contact name from my data entity under Data Source, and have a number of options should there be duplicates in the target file destination. As an option, I can configure the number of allowed files or max file size, but we'll just leave it with the default settings. Thus far, we haven't really implemented any rules, so let's hide all of the fields here, starting with search site address, and show or hide them based on rules and form inputs. First, let's test my configuration to show that nothing is being shown on the form. And based on the entries, we will show or hide these fields dynamically. We'll start by the search site address field and select the rules button, and begin creating our rules. As you can see here, I'm going to want to show and hide a handful of controls each. So when the search site address by field is equal to enter address, I want to show control search site address, show control for a few additional fields, as well as disable the controls for a few others. I'm going to select latitude and longitude for both. In addition, I'm going to show the control for a few additional fields. I will select map address, the map itself, as well as choose the role for my next rule. When search site address by is equal to enter coordinates, I want to go through the same steps from a moment ago. I'm going to hide the control search site address, as well as show a few controls. Additionally, I want to enable a few controls. First, I'm going to show the controls latitude and longitude, enable those controls, as well as show the control for search by site address. I want to do the same for contact information as well as the map and the ability to choose the role. I want these rules to execute independently, so I will leave that selected. In addition, I also want these rules to execute upon form load. Next, I will go to choose the role and again select the rules button. When any of these conditions are met, I want to choose role out of the following is equal to homeowner or other. Then I want to show control, will the work be supervised by a licensed contractor? In addition, I also want to hide the controls to certify, as well as to attach additional supplementary materials. Lastly, when the choose role is equal to licensed contractor, I also want to show and hide a few controls. I want to enable the attached supplementary documents, as well as hide control for certify, and will the work be supervised by an independent contractor. Again, I want to execute these rules independently, as well as execute them upon form load. My next rule will be when will the work be supervised by a licensed contractor is equal to licensed contractor. I want to show the control, attach a scanned copy of supplementary documents, and hide the control for certify. When the work will be supervised is equal to homeowner, I also want to show the control for certify and hide the control for attach supplementary documents. Again, I want these rules to execute independently and also on form load. Next, let's test our configuration and ensure the form is behaving as we intended. Based on my selection here for role, as you can see, additional options are showing. Next, let's apply some CSS that will apply to all of the forms across my application. I'm going to select my shared CSS and import it. Select the checkbox and click OK. Now my CSS is going to apply against all forms in this application. I will save and check in the application and click on the Update form. AgilePoint asks if I want to copy the layout to this form. And as you can see here, we have the same look and feel, the same controls, and the same logic applied to this form as we had on the prior form. There are a few changes I'd like to make. Starting with the map here, we're going to have the address at the center of the map, as well as change the default value. This will bring up the location on the map based on the previous submission. I will save and check this in. And now I can publish the application. I will check in all of the artifacts and click Publish. Now my application is ready to be consumed. Let's bring up our application. So I'll go to the Work Center, select My Applications, and select Show Form-Based Apps Only. And I will now initiate the construction permit application. Let's enter a new entry here. As you can see here, my name is being displayed by default. I'm going to search the site address that I've used throughout the building of this application. And as you can see, all of the data is being pre-populated, as well as the data on the map. The work will be supervised by the homeowner, and we do certify the entry that we've made. Now I can always go back and edit the existing construction permit, and as you can see here, I can change some of these values, add in my supplementary documentation, and have that then attached to my SharePoint environment. This concludes the content for this video.